Hey everybody, I'm Chef Tom with atbbq.com, and this is asado steak empanadas. A few things to explain before we get started. First of all, asado, what is that? That is a general term for grilled meats in South America. Today we're doing an Argentinian style empanada filling using skirt steak. So empanada, that simply means basically a pastry that's filled with meat, some sort of handheld meat pie, basically. Third thing I'll admit freely, this is not an authentic Argentinian empanada because we are taking some shortcuts, and that's because I want this to be an approachable recipe that any of you feel like you can make. Instead of making our own empanada dough today, we're gonna be using puff pastry. So think of it as more of an asado turnover, if you will. It's still very delicious. And we're gonna grill that steak up and make the filling all from scratch. So let's start with the meat. This is an outside skirt steak here from Creekstone Farms. Super quality beef. It does have a little bit more fat and sinewy stuff on the outside than what I want, so I'm just gonna trim that stuff off. Any like really hard fat we'll kind of take from the edges. Leaving a little bit behind is not a bad thing, but you just don't want to be chewing on fat, especially because this is all gonna get chopped up into little cubes, so you risk just having cubes of fat as a filling, which is why we want to trim some of that off. Especially like down here, some of this harder fat, a little bit of it on the surface, like I said, is a good thing. A lot of it is not. You'll see that these white streaks running in between the muscle fibers, this will indicate that you've got a decent amount of fat that's intramuscular, which means it's worked its way through the muscle and means we don't need as much fat on the surface. Now next I'm gonna divide this roughly 1.5 pounds of skirt steak into 3 separate pieces so it fits on the grill just a little bit better. Now one way to add a lot of flavor to your steak is by using a marinade or a brine like this one. This one uses both acid and salt, so it's a marinade and a brine. It's a concentrate, so we're gonna use half of this bottle worth of the bath and then half of it full of water. Give it a good shake here. This is the Trace chilies from Sweetwater Spice. As the name indicates, it's got 3 different chili peppers in it. It's an apple juice based brine, or marinade I should say. So into the briner bucket here. Nice thing about skirt steaks is they're pretty thin, so you don't need a whole lot. You can only use half a bottle here and you're still gonna get all the effect you want. We'll let that soak in there for an hour or 2. So here's a batch that I started this morning. It's been soaking for about 2 hours. You can see the physical change that happens. It's both tenderized now and you're adding a lot more flavor to it. So we're just gonna get some of this excess moisture off the surface and get it seasoned up. We'll leave a little bit of that behind to act as a binder for our rub. We're gonna be seasoning up our steak with the Cattleman's Grill Roadhouse beef rub. Now this is essentially an elevated brisket rub, so it's got your salt, pepper, it's got celery seed, it's got garlic, and then on top of that it's got like chipotle and cumin, so it adds just a little bit more flavor. And that'll all work really nicely with that marinade that we used earlier. All right, so not crazy heavy on the seasoning. It's gonna pick up some salt from that bath that it was soaking in. As soon as this is attached to the surface, looks kind of wet, we're ready to grill it off. Today we're cooking on the Yoder Smoker's YS640s pellet grill. We're running hickory pellets at 500 degrees, so high heat. We're gonna be cooking with the door open the entire time today because, as you can see, these are pretty thin steaks. So if we wanna get some color on them and not overcook them, then we don't wanna trap the heat in there. So I've still got the diffuser in there, but the diffuser door is removed. So we have a concentrated heat area right here, which is perfect for the size of what we're doing today. We're just gonna lay these steaks right over the fire and let them get some color before we flip them and temp them. All right, getting some nice char, some grill marks on our steak here, so we're gonna flip these over. Keeping that fat one in the middle since it's gonna take a little bit longer than the others. But you can see how we're getting that direct flame from underneath, comes up through the holes in the grill grates, so you get a really nice kiss of that char on the meat. So once these come up to about 125, 130, we're ready to pull them off. It's always easier to clean these things when they're hot. There's some stuff in that marinade that causes this to stick a little bit. So we'll give this a scrape down. We're gonna put the door in So let's move these grill grates out of the way, throw our door down. Now we can cook indirect. Turn this down to about 425 to bake the empanadas. We'll go second shelf so we're away from the direct heat. Turn this down. Now we're gonna work on the rest of the ingredients for this filling. We're making something similar to Soffritto, which is just to say some sauteed onion and peppers, and we're actually gonna add green olives to this one as well. So we'll start by dicing up our onion. Now I only need about a half of a cup, so 1/2 of an onion should be plenty. We'll cut around the world. And then a fairly small dice. Next we've got some red bell pepper. We're just gonna take a couple sides off here, and again about a 1/2 cup of that pepper. Next we've got our green olives. We need about a 1/4 cup. I don't want any giant chunks of these olives in our filling, so we're just gonna smash them down and chop them up. Now I've preheated the Lodge steel skillet on the induction burner. I'm gonna throw down just a little bit of olive oil, about a 1/2 cup of those onions, 1/2 cup of the peppers, and we're just gonna kind of sweat these down until they're translucent. But those are getting softened up nicely. Now we're gonna add about a teaspoon of dried oregano. You can use fresh if you can find it, but it's not always super easy to source, depending on where you live. Also gonna throw in those chopped green olives. And just give this about 30 to 60 seconds to warm up, and then we're gonna add some chicken stock and let it reduce almost all the way down just to concentrate that flavor. All right, that oregano is getting really aromatic, so are those olives. So now I'm gonna add a 1/2 cup of chicken stock. And like I said, we're just gonna let this reduce way down. So while that sauce is cooking down, we're gonna go ahead and chop up our skirt steak, into small bite-sized pieces. Once it's fully chopped, we'll add it back with everything else in the pan to warm it back up. So you can see that almost all that liquid has reduced down now, just concentrated that flavor into the onions and the peppers. Now we can take our chopped steak and throw this in here, and we'll just let that warm up a little bit. And of course, this is all gonna get stuffed into pastry and baked on the grill, so it'll have time to warm up. We don't have to do too much here. I just wanna get everything mixed really well. All right, let's see how this tastes. I wouldn't change a thing. That steak has no business being that tender, but I think through that bath process where we brined and marinated it, it really tenderizes it. I'm getting the pepper, I'm getting the oregano, definitely getting a little bit of that salty, briny olive in there. Let's get this stuff into some pastry. I've got 2 sheets of what was frozen puff pastry. I'm gonna divide each one into 4 equal squares. We're gonna use a little egg wash here, both as glue for the empanada and as a topping to brown the top. You just need a single egg. We'll whisk that up. So now we're gonna take about a 1/4 cup of this filling, pop it right here in the middle. I'm gonna get my brush, and we're gonna brush around the edges of this thing to help glue it together. And pull that top over there. Pinch it at the other end, and then that egg wash is just gonna kind of glue everything together. So we'll put a few little scores in the top so it can breathe, and put that on a parchment lined sheet pan. So now we're gonna take that same egg wash and brush it over the tops. Again, this is gonna help with some browning and to give it a little bit of shine. So really cosmetic. This is a step that could be skipped if you want. Although we are gonna hit it with a little bit more seasoning on top, just for the presentation. And this egg wash is gonna help that stick. Now just a little bit more of that same seasoning that we put on the steak, the Cattleman's Roadhouse, just for a little color and texture on the outside. Not a lot. Back to the odor now. It's sitting at 425 on the grill temperature. We have put the diffuser door in the bottom so that we're cooking completely indirect. So while these finish cooking, we're gonna put together a little crema for a dipping sauce. It's pretty common to serve these with chimichurri. And while we're not making a full-fledged chimichurri, we're gonna mimic some of those flavors. But if you want to, we have a full video on how to make chimichurri from scratch. So we're doing equal parts sour cream, mayo, and these 505 roasted green chilies, a half cup of each. The great thing about these 505 green chilies is they come in mild, medium, and hot, so you can control your heat level. The only other thing we're gonna add to this is a splash of red wine vinegar. You could leave this chunky if you like, but I want to puree it down so that we get all that flavor in every bite. So we're going to use the immersion blender just to combine all of this and break down those chilies. It's creamy, it's tangy. It's got just a little bit of heat from those medium fire roasted chilies. I like it. About 45 minutes in now, you can see we've got some great golden brown color going on, a nice shine on there, and that pastry is cooked through. Moment of truth here. Oh, that filling. That's right on point. Now this is not empanada dough. No doubt about it, but I love a flaky puff pastry. Great layers to it, great texture, perfectly browned right here. That's not a bad shortcut if you want to make empanadas. Would recommend. Well, thank you guys so much for watching. Be sure to check out atbbq.com for all the products featured in today's video. If you enjoy the recipe, hit that subscribe button. And if you have any questions or comments, if there's anything you want to see me cook, let me know in the comment section down below, and let's be good to one another. For more recipes, tips, and techniques, head over to atbbq.com/thesauce. All things barbecue, where barbecue legends are made.